Welcome to CTV News Channel. I'm Akshay Tandon. This is a live shot this afternoon. We are listening into the Secret Service giving us updates on the Trump assassination attempt. Let's dip in.
What happened? We are in an unprecedented threat environment and a high operational tempo during this presidential campaign. The men and women of the Secret Service are working incredibly hard and doing their jobs under difficult circumstances. They need to focus on their work, and they need to know that I have their backs, and that is my commitment to them. I want to thank our state and local partners. The Secret Service relies on local law enforcement for every protective event. Those valiant men and women work tirelessly protecting their communities. They know the people, places, and terrain that we operate in. We owe them our thanks, and simply put, we cannot do our jobs without them. And I know how important this relationship is. I spent 4 years in local law enforcement before joining the Secret Service. I know the long hours these men and women put in and the professionalism they bring to this partnership. And in that capacity, I was always proud to support the Secret Service's protective mission when called upon as a municipal police officer. In no way should any state or local agency supporting us in Butler on July 13th be held responsible for a Secret Service failure. Typically, the Secret Service refrains from commenting on ongoing investigations, but we know these are extraordinary circumstances. So please understand that the information provided today is based on what I know now to a degree of certainty. We will learn more as interviews are completed and further evidence is gathered and analyzed, and I will share more information as it becomes available. But I can say without a doubt that heroism was present that day. Secret Service agents rushed to the stage to shield the former president with their bodies within 3 seconds of bullets ringing out in an unflinching act of bravery. The Secret Service counter-sniper who neutralized the threat with a single shot undoubtedly saved countless lives. We're in a high operational tempo, and I need and I want our Secret Service workforce, the dedicated men and women of the Secret Service. I want to know and I want to make sure that they are uplifted so they can focus on carrying out the mission. They are worthy of trust and confidence, and they deserve your support. And let me take a moment to speak to the American people that are counting on us to do our job, to protect their ability to cast a vote for the candidate of their choice. The Secret Service's successes are largely unknown. You will only know of our failures, and those have been documented, and all of them are undeniably dark days in our nation's history. But let me tell you about the dedicated patriots of the Secret Service. These public servants are the quiet professionals working in the background, day in and day out. They are standing the watch, providing a blanket of protection to the people that work in the White House, to the thousands of people who attend political rallies and nominating conventions, to the thousands of American citizens who line Pennsylvania Avenue every 4 years on Inauguration Day to see the new president and the new vice president. And they are out there right now doing this mission. They are focused, and they live their professional lives committed to the values of this agency: justice, duty, loyalty, courage, and honesty. This is who we are, and this is what we do, and we will earn back your trust. I'll now provide a timeline of the visit to Butler, Pennsylvania. On July 8th, personnel assigned to the agency's Pittsburgh field office conducted planning meetings and a site walkthrough with law enforcement partners and campaign staff. On July 10th, Secret Service counter-sniper and technical security personnel arrived in Pittsburgh and began advanced planning for their teams. July 12th, the build-out of the campaign rally site began and continued through the early morning hours of July 13th. In the morning of July 13th, a site briefing was conducted with Secret Service personnel and law enforcement partners supporting the event. Secret Service personnel took their posts, and a technical security sweep of the protective site commenced prior to the site's opening to event staff, vendors, and to the public. At 12:30 p.m., the Secret Service opened the protective site to event staff and vendors. And then at 1 o'clock, magnetometer screening of the estimated 15,000 people attending the campaign rally event, staff and vendors began. At 5:30 p.m., former President Trump arrived at the campaign rally via Secret Service motorcade, and at that time he met with supporters in a secure backstage area within the protective site. At 5:45 p.m., a local Butler County Emergency Services Unit counter-sniper team member texted the Secret Service counter-sniper team leader about a suspicious person and sent 2 photos of the individual, later identified as the assailant. At 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service counter-sniper team leader texted the Secret Service counter-sniper teams that local law enforcement was looking for a suspicious individual outside of the perimeter lurking around the AGR building. At this time, Secret Service personnel were operating with the knowledge that local law enforcement was working on an issue of a suspicious individual. The concept of local law enforcement working on such issues is common at sites. And on July 13th, there were over 100 calls for support. At 6 p.m., former President Trump took the stage to begin remarks. And based on what I know right now, neither the Secret Service counter-sniper teams nor members of the former president's security detail had any knowledge that there was a man on the roof of the AGR building with a firearm. It is my understanding that personnel were not aware the assailant had a firearm until they heard gunshots. At 6:11 p.m., a member of the former President Trump's protective detail contacted their Pittsburgh field office counterpart to inquire about the radio update that there was an issue local law enforcement was looking into near the perimeter. At 6:11 p.m., the assailant's first volley of 3 shots was fired, and within 3 seconds, the former president's detail rushed the stage and covered former President Trump, shielding him with their own bodies. The 4 through 8 shots took place over the next several seconds. 15.5 seconds after the assailant's first shot, a Secret Service counter-sniper fired a single round that neutralized the assailant. That concludes a quick, brief summary of the timeline. And with that, I'll turn it over to our staff here to begin any questions.
Director, we're going to start with Fox News. David Sponsor.
Hi, sir. Thank you for doing this. You said earlier this week to Congress that you said earlier this week to Congress that you don't want to tip anything on the scale as far as disciplinary action is concerned. I need to ask you, since you testified, has anyone been suspended with or without pay? Has anyone been fired? And will you tell us as people are disciplined along the way, or is this something we're going to need to just constantly be asking? Or will you update and tell us 5 people have been fired, 6 people, 7 people? What can you tell us?
Sure. Thank you for that question, David. So, as I said in my opening statement, there are going to be, there's the mission assurance review. If that mission assurance review is looking into if there were policy violations. At that point now, if in fact there were policy violations, at that point now it'll go into a parallel path of a disciplinary type of investigation. Those are internal investigations that deal with employee matters, so we're not going to be able to provide real-time updates or continuously to provide you updates on that. But what I will tell you is that these are very thorough investigations, and if in fact there were policy violations and they are substantiated, those employees will be held accountable.
I think if I just may, sir, people want accountability. You may not be able to tell us names or positions or something, but will you be able to say that people have been disciplined? People want to hear that there's some accountability here.
I will be able to, at least at a high level, provide at least some type of statement that people are being accountable, being held accountable.
If I may, and I appreciate this, Fox Digital obtained some new video of somebody on the roof, which we believe is the assailant that was running back and forth while President Trump was speaking. What do you make when you see of that? How does that go with this timeline?
Yeah, so it affirms to me, and again, and you heard this from the FBI, and they're still conducting interviews and looking at this. It even just affirms to me that this was a failure. We should have had better protection for the protectee. We should have had better coverage on that roof line. We should have had at least some other set of eyes from the Secret Service point of view, covering that. That building was very close to that outer perimeter, and we should have had more of a presence. And so as far as the timeline of him running back and forth, I know the FBI has provided a bit of a chronology as well. And so I'd have to go back and look at that. But the bottom line is this, David. This was a Secret Service failure. That roof line should have been covered. We should have had better eyes on that.
Thanks, Director. We're going to go to the Washington Post. Carrie Stein.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I have just a quick follow-up. Can you describe, you said there were 100 calls for support, who those calls came from and what those looked like? And also, moving forward, do you anticipate, and if so, what any different changes in protocol between how Secret Service communicates or works with local law enforcement specifically as they work to secure events or other things?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So with regards to calls for support, it was a very hot day that day. There was a lot of not only EMS type of calls to address people, but there were people that needed some other type of law enforcement assistance. This happens a lot at outdoor rallies, especially on hot days. So there was a lot of radio traffic on the local net about, hey, I need EMT here. So there was a lot of people that were needing assistance. With respect to the interoperability, so one of the things that I've directed is I've commissioned a task force. And that task force is going to be leveraging the resources of the Department of Homeland Security. It'll be co-chaired in all likelihood by someone from the Secret Service and someone from CISA. And I think we're also going to bring in some state and local law enforcement. The interoperability challenge, it's not an easy fix. It's not as simple as just trying to figure out the local frequency of the agency you're working with and then piping that into your radio network. It requires a substantial technical fix. In the meantime, before we can get to that, what I need to have is I need to make sure that our folks, when they're out there, we use a counterpart system. On the day in Butler, we had a Pennsylvania state trooper in our security room. They also had a unified command post that had some of the other agencies that were on site that day. It is plainly obvious to me that we didn't have access to certain information, not by anybody's fault. It just so happened that there was a sense of urgency, that there might have been radio traffic that we missed. We have to do a better job of that. So moving forward, in addition to this task force that we'll provide more information on next week as we begin to stand that up, I've also directed all of our SACs, our special agents in charge of field offices across the country, to reevaluate where we put our security rooms. If a state or local sets up a unified command post, maybe we need to be in that room as well, as opposed to just being in another room and relying on that counterpart system. It was so apparent to me that in this incident, in the final 30 seconds, which has been the focus of what happened before the assailant opened fire, there was clearly radio transmissions that may have happened on that local radio net that we did not have. And so we have to do a better job of co-locating, leveraging that counterpart system, and this is going to drive our operations going forward.
All right, we've been listening to Acting Director Ronald Rowe of the Secret Service providing an update on Trump assassination attempt on July 13th, saying that the Secret Service takes full responsibility for the events on that day of Trump assassination attempt, and it was a failure on part of the Secret Service, something that we have, of course, heard before. But what was different about today is we got a complete timeline, minute-to-minute breakdown of the series of events that took place on that day on July 13th, on how the venue was screened, how it was secured, and how people were let in. I'll just take a few points from there when Ronald said that Donald Trump arrived at 5:30 p.m. It was around 5:53 p.m., about 23 minutes later, that there were texts between the law enforcement agencies and Secret Service talking about they are looking for a suspect who was acting suspicious. It was at 6 p.m. Donald Trump took to the stage, but Secret Service and law enforcement had no knowledge that the suspect, the man, was on the building. with a firearm. It was at 6:11 p.m. First volley of shots were fired, and thereafter, of course, Secret Service agents jumped in on Donald Trump to protect him, and then the assailant was shot immediately with a single shot, saving many lives. So those are the details that are coming in this afternoon from the acting director of the Secret Service. We'll, of course, keep a close eye if there is any other major update, and we will bring that to you.